A
And then
general
you sit down
backdrop.
and you write, huh?
A general backdrop. Yeah.
Yeah, like, just a general setting, um, a time, a place, a, a world, a general kind of setting for the people can interact in. Um, and then you have to sit down and you write out the script for that particular uh, segment. You're writing. You can write a. I mean, the program could be anywhere from 15 minutes to. I mean, in the old, just kind of see what we could capture on film, or I
Mhm.
mean, we didn't have smartphones or anything in those days, so we had to use camcorders. But mostly what we did was just went out and recorded in handwritten logs what we felt because we were all mediums, and this was our way of documenting. So we would also record on audio our thoughts and impressions about what we felt, and we did this actually for the someone that we used to work with who was associated with the historical society in the area. They didn't work for the historical society, but they worked with the historical society, with the
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania County Historical Society,
They
and they
were
were a
more
big
affiliated,
paranormal
not
nut. They
employed.
really wanted us to try to document some of the paranormal activity going on around the battlefield because a lot of people report paranormal activity at Chancellorsville, Wilderness, uh, Courthouse. I mean, there's even paranormal activity around Salem Church. Um, and I don't live more than a stone's. I mean, I live a stone's throw from Salem Church. Anyway, so I mean, I got shit going on in the house all the time. But so anyway, and we had gone. We weren't. We had been. We were near the road at one point in the night, trying to. We had set up. I don't remember if we had the camera set up at this point, but we were recording our audio, and I think Corey, the friend of mine down in Florida now, I think she was recording in her like writing and like recording stuff in the log, but handwritten in the log. But we were also recording audio, and we distinctly heard um, hoofbeats,
Oh,
and it actually we didn't think it did, but it actually showed. It actually recorded. You could actually very faintly hear them on the audio. And this was coming from where the paved road was, which was maybe about 10 or 15 feet from where we were at that point. It would have been to our right because we were facing towards Route 3. So it would have been to our right. And we all just turned like a flock of birds.
yeah.
I mean, it was like one of those, what the fuck was that?
Yep.
And I think we pretty much all said it almost in unison. Um, and, but there was definitely a distinctive, it wasn't a gallop, but it wasn't a walk. It was more kind of but it wasn't like a heavy trot. It was more kind of like a light trot, like you might do if you were moving from one part of a line to another, like front to back or left to right.
Not like a horse coming home.
Yeah, like it was a horse coming.
Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Well, I mean, but it was coming. It was coming towards us, and so yeah, but it was like a horse coming. It was a light trot, so it was like you might do if you're just kind of moving, relatively
Yeah, yeah.
briskly, but not.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's
and
interesting. Okay. I have a ghost story too. That's in the area. Whenever you're ready.
about 7 years ago, I think,
Mm.
um, or so, I was dating a girl at the time that lived with her family in that house,
Mm.
and they told me the story of that house. Now, I had heard about that previously because when we did paranormal work in that area, that house is actually literally within feet of where we were working when we heard the hoofbeats.
Mm.
That house, that it's this big neo-colonial house that was built sometime around 1900, and
Okay.
it's been renovated a few times since then. But anyway, um, it's been there since about 1900, and but I mean it's literally within 30 feet of where we were standing, or more, maybe a little more than 30, maybe more about 40 or 50 feet. But it's on that dirt road that you kind of have to because you go down that paved road and you just barely go down that paved road, and then you have to turn sharply off that paved road to get on that dirt road. And then you go down that dirt road a little bit, and there's the house is right there. You really can't miss it. And anyway, so the guy's name was David, I think. Yeah, it was David. And he had some mental health issues. He was very bipolar. I think it was bipolar 2, which is the one where you kind of have a lot of the bipolar 2 is the really severe one.
Oh, okay.
And he also had a lot of other mental health issues. I don't know what all they were. I only remember that he had bipolar 2 or something similar to that. But anyway, he lived with his mom and his sister in the house, and they really did not treat him well. They would lock him in the basement.
Just the heck?
And actually, it was a nice basement, don't get me wrong. But just to be locked in a basement for anybody is just
like an in-law
yeah.
suite?
I'm sorry?
Was it like an in-law suite, they say, where the basement has a little kitchen?
No.
Oh.
I mean, it was a bedroom and a living area.
Oh, okay.
And there was this huge old-time stone fireplace. I mean stone. Some of these stones were bigger than my head. Stone and mortar fireplace. Big enough. The hearth was big enough that a child, even a decent-sized child, could completely sit inside the hearth.
Oh, wow.
But anyway, and I mean, the hearth sat a good 6 or 7 inches, or 6 or, let's see, I don't know, it must have been a good 8 inches off of the ground, 10 inches off of the ground. I mean, there's a huge fireplace in this basement. And it's important to note the basement also there was a crack in the foundation somewhere, or multiple cracks. And so the basement kind of flooded a little bit. And you could, and so the door on the outside, where the main living area where the living area of the main floor of the house was, actually had, you know, those hook and loop latches, where you have the eye hook, and it's that you have an eye hook. An eye hook. It's called an eye hook because it looks like it has a part that's circular and it looks kind of like an eye. And what you do is you drill that into one side of something, usually like a door frame or something like that. And then it has this little hook part that you put into the other side of the door frame or attached to a door or something like that. And it's just basically a bar, and it ends in a hook. And then that eye hook, or that hook, swings up and down. And so to close it, what you do is you drop that hook down into that round circular part that's drilled into the door frame. And the door is secure. It cannot be opened. And then to open it, you pull that latch out, and you can open the door. Oftentimes, you used to see them a lot on pantries.
Okay.
And larders. It used to be kind of an old-time child safety kind of thing, because it's not the kind of thing a child can easily manipulate,
Right.
Especially if you do it right. But anyway, so on the outside of this door, where the main area of the house was, there was one of these latches, so that the mom and sister could latch the door shut, so that David could not open that door. And if you looked, this is the sad part. And I'll tell you something. This is part of what being a medium means. If you look at when you look down at the bottom of the door, like the lower left corner of that door, you could look. You didn't even have to look hard. It was clear and obvious. The deep. I mean, we're talking like almost half an inch deep scratches and carvings that he made into that door. Now, this was a solid wooden door. This wasn't like one of those IKEA doors.
Yeah, one of those IKEA doors.
Yeah, you know, where it's like 2 pieces of particle board with a thin piece with another piece of particle board at either end.
Yep.
This was a solid piece of wooden door, a real wooden door.
Yeah.
So to get those scratches, a full half an inch or so, or half an inch plus or minus, deep, he had to sit there and carve that same spot repeatedly for hours, days, months, maybe years. And there were distinctive shapes. Like one of the shapes, there was what looked to me, and again, this is part of what being a medium was. It looked like a fish. But when I looked at it, I knew it was not a fish. It was a shark. And not just a shark, it was a great white shark.
Is it like a favorite shark kind of fish?
I don't know if that was his favorite type of shark or anything like that, but he I know that that's what was in his mind as he was carving it into this door frame, into this door. And this was a deep carving. This was like I said, this was about a half an inch into this wood. So he took time to carve deep into this wood. Distracted by something because we were all paying attention to each other. So our eyes were on each other and not on what was going on with the cards. Mm-hmm. So we looked down to start playing the game, and now there's 4 hands dealt instead of just 3.
Oh.
And now it's important to note that the girl that I was seeing and her family, they didn't, and this baffles me to this day, they didn't really buy into the paranormal so much, but they were intrigued by the fact that I was a medium. Mm-hmm. And so they kept asking me to read the house and stuff like this. And yet they never really believed a lot of what I was telling them. And so I just didn't understand their logic. I think the girl that I was dating kind of maybe bought it a little bit more than the others did, but Steve still didn't really buy it that much. But anyway, so there were now 4 hands dealt. So the 3 of us decided that David obviously wanted to play, so we kind of kept track for him, kept score for him too. And her daughter decided that he should win the game, and so she made sure that he won the game in terms of points. And with that, I felt that he liked that. I really felt that he enjoyed playing the game with us. So what was your story?
Well, very, very interesting stories that you have with the extra tilt hand. I mean, that's interesting to top. Me and Smalls Noodle a while ago went to an estate sale, and it was in the South Stafford area of Chatham. It was across the bridge. It's pretty much in the downtown area, but it's the Chatham area. And we went to a neighborhood. It was a private neighborhood, and there was an estate sale. And I've never seen anything like this before or after. The house was a house that had extensions put onto it. Like, it was renovated and rebuilt for the 21st century, rather. For the 21st century. But there was the original house, you could tell, on the other half of it was something that must have been from 1910 or 1890, because there was a second kitchen and living room and everything. And they were very tiny and they were compact, and it was like something out of one of those liminal space videos. It was actually Backrooms-esque. It was really weird. And this was back around I think around the COVID time, 2021. And we're walking through the house, and so obviously I'm trying to stack the deck here and say that half this house is just giving off such eerie vibes. And sure enough, we walk past this one spot in the hallway, and it smells like a dead person. Like, it smells horrendous, and no one was making any comment on it. No one was picking up on it, making any signs or nothing. And when we went back into the renovated area of the house that was made for must have been built in, say, 2007, it was all fine and dandy. And then you go back to the older part of the house, and it smelled awful. But it was the weirdest thing because it was uncanny, it was strange, and no one else was really picking up on it. And it was this estate sale, so people were trying to move out. And you know about estate sales, they're basically like fancy yard sales. And so people put it's a way to at least in this case it was basically a way for the previous owners to then also kind of put up enough money to also put the house up for sale. So whoever used to live there, they wanted out. And what a bizarre house. I have never seen it.
The actual estate sale. It was really spooky. It was interesting. I found it to be it was weird because it kind of looked like the section that they built off was kind of sequestered. They didn't want anyone to really kind of be over there. Yeah, but it was also open, and so it was weirdly open yet weirdly not. And so it was interesting, at least to see in that kind of aspect.
Okay. Well, I have I can actually titillate you even more. Actually, many years ago, 23 years ago now, I actually had a Bigfoot encounter. It was me and 3 friends of mine, and it was myself, my friend John, who I have told you in Smalls Noodle about many times, I believe in a session we did a couple of years ago now, I think, or a year and a half or so ago now, I think. I told you some stories about John and the Lost Boyos and I. But this was John and his now widow, Jenna, and myself, and the girl I was dating at the time. And we had gone on a weekend hiking trip. It was supposed to be a 4 or 5 day hiking trip in the Jefferson National Forest, which is pretty southern Virginia. I mean, it's down
Yep.
like southern tail of the West Virginia border, getting towards the panhandle of Virginia. And I mean, this is pretty remote wilderness. And we were, and it's important to note also, we were actually up in the mountain, so we were not. We had not seen anybody going in when we started hiking, and we had not seen anybody going up to where we were started hiking in. So there was nobody around. We got a good bit of the way in, almost about halfway to where we were going to make camp for the first night. And from an elevation slightly higher than us, we heard the most horrifying, is the only way I can describe it, yell, like scream yelling. The only way, I mean, what I liken it most to, when I tell people about about my encounter, I tell them, if you want to understand what it sounded like, go listen to the bass solos of an orangutan. Because that's very similar to what it sounded, similar, but not quite, to what it sounded like. I mean, it was like,
Yeah, very uncanny noise to be hearing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so much deeper than that, and aggressive. Well, not aggressive like it wanted to attack us, but more like a territorial. Like,
it was announcing its presence.
Who are you? What are you doing in my territory? And Jenna, I mean, we're all just looking around on the rise, trying to figure out where this is coming from. And Jenna goes,
"Yeah, if you can look anyway." Yeah.
Well, I mean, but actually, interestingly enough, the Sci-Fi Channel had actually started on a series of stupid, I mean, it's really dumb Sasquatch horror movies about Sasquatches mauling people lost in the woods and stuff. I mean, we're talking movies that even Jeffrey Combs couldn't save, because I think he was in one of them, had like a brief cameo in one of them as like some dude on a respirator that smoked and like died or something. But I could be mistaken on that. I have very vague memories of that one. But we're talking really bad movies, and I'm just sitting here going, this is how Sasquatch horror movies start. Hikers in the woods getting mauled by Sasquatches. Actually, one of my favorite movies is simply called Exist, and it's actually a found footage horror movie, which is where it's kind of, found footage horror movies are kind of like the Blair Witch Project, where it's like filmed from the camcorder's point of view. It's about a group of kids that college age kids that go deep into the woods and to a cabin where they plan to spend the weekend, and they end up striking running over a baby Bigfoot, and the mother, I guess, just kills them, well, goes after them. But it's a great movie. It's a really good movie. Very well done.
What's it called?
Exists.
Oh, okay.
Corey, the friend of mine down in Florida, the one from the first paranormal story I told, she actually introduced me to it. But anyway, so back to the story. We're looking around on the rise, and Jenna's just like, so, is that the wind? And John just looks at it and goes, we all know that was not the motherfucking wind.
Yeah, right.
And she just kind of shrugged. I mean, because I really think she was just saying that because, I mean, that's what you're supposed to say. I mean, so meanwhile, the girl I was dating at the time was a Japanese girl. She had just barely, she had been a foreign exchange student. She had just moved here from Japan. She was trying to get citizenship, and we were talking about getting engaged at that point. Well, I had been talking to her father about getting engaged specifically. Actually, interestingly enough, her dad worked for Sony, and worked with Sony. He was he worked with Sony as a graphics designer, and he worked on a lot of projects for like back in those days. It was like Xenogears and Xenosaga, I think. He worked on some of the Final Fantasy, like I think it was Final Fantasy VII at that time, and
Interesting.
Takada Kujiro.
Oh, I'd have to look up that name.
Yeah, a lot of gamers do know Takada Kujiro. I'm giving the Japanese name, last surname first, but Takada Kujiro is some of his work is pretty well known to some gamers, but not a lot of gamers pay attention to the credits.
Mm-hmm.
Those who do know his name.